America is an amazing country filled with wonderful people who do incredible things. But too often, the media and liberal politicians ignore big parts of our nation and the people who make it work. So I'm speaking with leaders and policymakers who deal with real problems every day. I'm Ronna McDaniel, and this is Real America. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Ohio Congressman and founder of the House Freedom Caucus, Jim Jordan. We're going to cover everything from holding Democrats accountable when we take back the majority to the woke left's radical agenda to destroy women's sports. I am so excited to welcome my neighbor from Ohio, me being from Michigan, Jim Jordan, to Real America. Welcome to my podcast.
Good to be with you.
I haven't talked to you a ton, but I was talking to you yesterday because, and part of the reason I wanted to get you on my podcast is, one, I think you're phenomenal. You're such a great spokesperson for our party.
You do all the hard work for the party. We appreciate that.
Well, I think you're so great. But you have an Ohio State connection. My husband went to Ohio State.
You're telling me that.
We'll talk about that later, but I do want to hear your story. So you grew up in Champaign County.
Champaign County, yeah, just a country boy. Had, my dad was a union worker for General Motors, worked his tail off for...
Really? Was he on the line, or was he...
Yeah, he was a job setter, and 30 years, kind of that generation. He came out of high school. Him and my mom got married right away. I'm the oldest, got a younger brother, a year younger, and a sister, and he worked hard. My mom cleaned houses, and they put 3 kids through college. Amazing. And I called him yesterday. Yesterday was his birthday. And I called him and I said, what are you doing for your birthday? You and Mom going to dinner? And they were on the lake fishing. On the lake fishing. And my mom caught a big bass yesterday. So, but a great parent.
Was he a Democrat? Because he was a union guy, right? Total Democrat.
Until Reagan.
Reagan.
And so in 1980, like so many Americans, he said, enough of this craziness. I'm voting for Reagan. And he's been a conservative, Rush Limbaugh listening Republican ever since. And he was also kind of a small business. So he worked for General Motors and then started big outdoorsman. So he started his own bow making, archery.
Really?
Recurve bows. He would custom make them for whatever draw length, whatever pound the customer needed. Really, it's kind of a craftsman kind of.
That's like a unique
product,
skill.
Yeah.
That's funny. I have 2 nieces that are doing archery. And that's such a unique sport.
Yeah. So great guy, and then started the kids. At our high school, wrestling's a big thing.
Yeah.
And my dad and my uncle started the kids program when my brother and I and some of our buddies were little, and it just became the thing at our school. And
And you became a big thing in wrestling too. I mean, I was thinking about your record in high school, and tell me if I'm right. 156-1, is that correct?
151. Yeah.
150 to 1, and I thought, okay, well let's take that record and let's hope we do that well in the midterms. That'd be pretty good, right?
I think we might.
I think we might.
You can feel it out there, but I think the country's fixing to make a change. So let's hope it's
hopefully we can emulate your wrestling record. But 150-1. So
I wanted to play linebacker. Every kid when I was in grade school, I always joke and say I wanted to play middle linebacker from Ohio. So you think I'd be a Bengal or Browns guy, and I love the Bengals and Browns. But when you're a kid growing up in the 70s, like I did, you loved the winning team. The winning team was the Steelers.
Okay.
And I love Mean Joe Green, the Steel Curtain, Terry Bradshaw on offense, Franco Harris. I can name almost every player on the team, but my favorite was Jack Lambert, who played middle linebacker for the Steelers. And I just knew, like every second, third grader in the country, that, when you're in grade school, you got life figured out, that I was going to play middle linebacker in the NFL.
For the Pittsburgh Steelers. And,
but you can tell I'm 5'7.5" on a good day, so I had to wrestle. But wrestling's been great to our family. Both our boys, we have 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys, and both our boys wrestled for the Badgers in college, did great. I got 3 nephews who wrestled, my brother's boys. I got my wife's brother's boys all wrestled in college as well. So it's been good to our family.
It's a good thing. My dad was a wrestler in college as well.
Awesome.
So not at your levels. You won 2 NCAA titles, correct?
Long time ago, yeah.
In Wisconsin. And then you came back and you were a coach at Ohio State. What was the difference between being the wrestler and being the coach? How much did you enjoy becoming a coach?
I actually like competing better. I mean, coaching was fun, but it's and when you find that kid who really wants to, that student athlete who really has the goal, wants to work hard, and is soaking it in, that's rewarding too when you can help them. But it's just I like competing better, I think, than
Why doesn't that surprise me? Actually, that does not surprise me at all. Well, when I put my husband through law school at Ohio State, so I have turned him into a University of Michigan fan. I please don't leave my podcast now, but he was an Ohio State fan for a little while, but I've converted him. So hopefully we can convert some Democrats to Republican if I can do that. I love the state of Ohio. Tell me about your state.
Well, it's like your state. It's big state. What Michigan's probably 9-10 million people. We're 11 or 12 million, I think, in Ohio, and we're big manufacturing, just like Michigan. I mean, our district, there are 435, and I think 435 congressional districts. I think the 4th district of Ohio, which I get the privilege of representing, is West Central, North Central Ohio. It's one of the top 20, 25 districts in manufacturing output. So huge manufacturing, but also big agriculture, sort of the start of the corn and soybean belt as you move across the Midwest. And, the old adage about Ohio, in Ohio, we make things and grow things. And that's what we do. And same in Michigan. So good people, hardworking people. And it's funny because I always feel like this town and, the so-called elite who live on the coast, who think they're so much better than us people in flyover country, they don't get it, and there's this sort of, I mean, you can see it in like, remember when Buttigieg said, "Oh, I don't care if gas is $4,
go get an EV,
go get an EV," and who was it? Colbert said, "I don't care if it's $15 a gallon because I drive a Tesla." Well, not everyone in Ohio drives a Tesla, or Michigan drives a Tesla, and this attitude, but. When you're out in Ohio where you make things, grow things, move things, you're in agriculture, construction, manufacturing, and trucking, you drive pickup trucks, you work hard, and you can't, I always tell folks, those people can't Zoom it in. They can't remote work. They got to go to work.
They got to go to work.
And this town where everyone gets to do all the Zoom meetings and remote and takes the Uber and drinks their fancy coffee and thinks they're so much better than us, drives me crazy. But it's just good, hardworking people.
I feel what you're saying so much because I remember when Trump was a candidate in Michigan and Macomb County, which was our Reagan Democrat county, right? Like your dad, those union workers. And he came in and he talked about manufacturing leaving our state. And he talked about hardworking, tax-paying, patriot Americans who love this country, who have lost a voice. In Washington, nobody cared about people from Michigan or Ohio. And he came and said, I'm going to go fight for you. And I think that's really
so true.
It's transformed our party.
Well said.
Into a working class party, and I hope we stay there.
President Trump and you and the work you guys have done with our party, you have made it what it always should have been, which is a populist party rooted in conservative principle. We always should have been that. Reagan started us there, but President Trump took us there.
He did.
And then you the work you've done, that's who we should be, because that is just Americans, hardworking Americans who know if you set a goal and you work hard, good things can happen to you and your family in this country. That's the American dream. And President Trump, when he talked about Make America Great Again, that's what it was all about. That was really what was sort of underpinned that whole concept. And the people get it. And then the elite, the best one was Anderson Cooper. He's on doing his show, and he said Trump voters stay at the Marriott and eat at the Olive Garden. Because, he stays at the 5-star. I'm
like, okay, what's wrong with that? Never-ending salad and bread, right?
And that's what I said. I said, well, where I'm from, Olive Garden and Marriott's a pretty good weekend,
pretty
right?
darn great.
Yeah. So, but that's the attitude they have, and President Trump understood that. And I think it's amazing that the billionaire from Manhattan is a man of the people, and then all these folks in this town who think they're someone. It's amazing to me. But he is so right. That is what we always should have been, and now that's what the Republican Party. And you see it in our state, in your state, where particularly Southeast Ohio, which used to be the swing area in Ohio, it is now so Trump. You go along the Ohio River. Those folks are so pro-Trump, and it's just
the same thing in Michigan and in this Macomb County area. It's just changed. It's transformed our party in a good way. Mm-hmm. But we have to hold that head, and we can't lose that as a party. So I'm going to talk about your book a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about the midterms. But I love your book that you have out right now, which I'm going to mess up the title, but basically says, do what you say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. Be who you ran as. And talk about your book right now and in some of the principles of that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I always say I think we make this job way too complicated.
Yeah.
What did you tell the voters you were going to do when you ran for it? If they give you the privilege to go serve them, their family, their community, their business, do what you said. And I always point out, no one did it better than President Trump. No one did more what he said he would do than he said he would cut taxes. He did. He said he'd build a wall. He did. He said he put conservatives on the court. He did 3 of them. He said he'd get out of the Paris deal. He did. He said he'd get out of the Iran deal. He did. He said he put the embassy in Jerusalem. He did. And a bunch of other things. I can't
holding China accountable.
Yeah, exactly. Bringing manufacturing jobs back. I mean, all those things he said, and he did them. And again, that's what drives the media. And
promises made, promises kept, right?
Well, I remember early in the Trump administration, Mark Meadows and I are in the White House. This is before Mark's chief of staff. This is 2017. And we're there in the West Wing, and we're in one of the offices. I don't know for which office, Miller's office, someone's office. And they got a big whiteboard on the wall. And they had literally written every single promise President Trump made in the 2016 campaign. Everyone. I mean, there's a whole. And they were checking them off as they got them done. Now, that's how you're supposed to
And that's
go.
your book, right?
Well, we talk about that. We talk a lot about President Trump, but we talk about how the Freedom Caucus came together. There were 9 of us who formed the group, and how that started, some of the early struggles and fights we got into. And then I also relate a lot about just by the way the good Lord worked it out, the committee assignments I have. I'm on the Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee, and those always seem to be the committees where you have these sort of intense investigations and hearings. And which I'm glad. I wouldn't want any other committees. So I talk about a lot of the key investigations. I feel like probably more than just about anyone in Congress, I've been involved in all these big investigations. When the IRS targeted conservatives, I was on the Benghazi Select Committee, part of the impeachment effort. Leader McCarthy was kind enough to take me and put me on the Intel Committee in the early impeachment efforts that Schiff was running in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol.
Yes, we remember. Thank goodness you were there.
So we were on all those, and I try to take the reader behind the scenes and let them know what happened. And for example, what happened down in the bunker in the basement. When I still remember the day when some of my colleagues, Matt Gaetz, Steve Scalise, and others, they stormed the bunker and they all came in. I mean, I still remember that day, and it was. I thought it was a great day because it, I think, really helped galvanize us and keep us together. Because if you remember, in that particular, when impeachment started in 2019, the conventional wisdom was every Democrat was going to vote in the House was going to vote to impeach President Trump, and a bunch of Republicans were going to join in.
Yep.
And what actually happened, because it was such a joke what they did, and all the facts were on our side, what actually happened is every single Republican in the House voted not to impeach. Democrats joined us, and one even switched parties, Jeff Van Drew, who's a great Republican. And that's a testimony to the facts that were on President Trump's side.
But that's also part of you being on judiciary and you doing the work that you did. And I'm going to segue from your book because I do think we're going to win back the House. I really do. I'm not taking that for granted. I hope we do. Everybody get out and vote and support candidates. But if we do, you're gonna have some really key committee assignments. And I think what you say in your book is so true. We have to do what we're going to say we're going to do. Listen, we're not going to be able to stop Biden in his tracks. He's still going to be president. Right. He'll still have veto power. But what are some of the things in judiciary that you can do? Because you're obviously going to be a leader on Judiciary Committee. What do you think are some of the things we can do to hold him accountable?
We need to pass. We need to pass legislation that makes sense and that's consistent with what we told the voters we're all about. Like we need to pass things that would actually fix the border. Yes. Right now we have no border. Yeah, and it's intentional. It's deliberate. What Mayorkas and Biden are doing too. They don't want a border. They just it's wide open. It's chaos. So we have to pass legislation that will do that. Now, Joe Biden's not going to sign it. The left wouldn't, even if he wanted to, the left wouldn't allow him. That now controls his party. We should still pass it. Show the American people this is what we're for. That and other issues. We should pass something that deals with the attacks on conservatives by big tech.
Exactly.
We should pass those things. The left Biden's not going to sign it. May not be able to get 60 votes and get through the Senate. But we should do it and help frame up the 2024 contest when I think President Trump is going to run. I hope he does. That's who I'm for. But help frame up the 2024 presidential race. That's how American politics works. So pass the things that need to be passed, then do the investigations so that we have a constitutional responsibility to do oversight. Do the investigations that need to be done so that the American people get the facts. We owe it to them to get the truth.
Let's talk about some of the investigations we need. And I really think, here we are wasting all this time on January 6th, this committee. which I think everybody should understand. Republicans were not allowed, it's against history that we were not allowed to appoint our members to that committee. So literally, we have Donald Trump and Republicans essentially on trial, and we only have a prosecution with no defense.
No
It's against,
cross-examination.
how can you talk about due process or the saving of democracy when you are actually setting up a system that is against everything we agree with?
Yeah.
When you have no defense for the person, nothing, there's no cross-examination. We wouldn't do this to anybody. We wouldn't do this to the worst criminal in our judicial system, but that's what we're doing with this committee. But what would you be investigating? I mean, I can think of some things. Yeah.
Border's top of the, I'm focused first on the Judiciary Committee. Border. Second, the political nature of the Justice Department right now.
Yep.
I mean, think about this. We now know, because we've had over a dozen whistleblowers from the FBI. FBI agents come to us and talk about crazy things that are going on in the Justice Department, like the Justice Department treating moms and dads as domestic terrorists. I mean, literally over 24 parents have been investigated. None of them have been found guilty of anything, but they've been investigated because Merrick Garland and the National School Board Association got together and set up this thing, working with the Biden White House, to go after parents, to set up this snitch line where you can report moms and dads who simply show up at a school board meeting and say, I don't want this crazy curriculum taught to my kid.
Really? They're investigating? I didn't know that.
20 over 24. And we've had, again, over a dozen agents come forward and talk to us about the school board issue and other issues at the Justice Department. But we know of over 24 cases where parents have been investigated. So we want to look into that. Other committees, the Oversight Committee needs to look into the Hunter Biden situation. Mm-hmm. I think there needs to be a special kind of joint committee. We've talked to Senator Paul, Senator Johnson, Representative Comer, and I. On his oversight, and we're judiciary, looking into the origins of COVID, the Hunter Biden situation, particularly the suspicious activity reports, 150 of them the Treasury Department has on Hunter Biden's business dealings, all those things. Ways and Means Committee. How in the world did thousands of Americans' tax returns get public? That's not supposed to happen in this country, but it did. So the Ways and Means Committee they need to sit down with the IRS and figure out how that happened. So all those things, so again, that the country, the people of this great country get the facts. So I think we owe it to them to do that. Leader McCarthy is committed to doing that. So
I think it's really important that we do that. I think it's really important that, and I know that Kevin will do this as speaker and you do this, that we get to the bottom of that. Can I add a couple things? The formula issue. Yeah. How did this get so bad where parents in the United States of America are searching to feed their children? Then
Afghanistan.
Yeah. How do we leave $80 billion of equipment? And how do we pull out our troops before a successful civilian operation to get civilians and those who helped us out of harm's way? There's so much. And it's not about Republican versus Democrat. We really have to understand it to make sure it never happens again.
Well said.
And we need to shed light on that. And I think the coronavirus as well. I mean, we have now Fauci going on TV saying, oh, yeah, it could have come out of a lab. We have Dr. Birx saying that.
He knew.
They did not say that ever during this. And thousands of lives have been lost.
On that specific issue. So 5 weeks ago, I asked Dr. Birx a question. I'm on this select committee on coronavirus here. And I asked Dr. Birx, she was a witness, asked her a simple question. And we talk about misinformation and disinformation from the government. I said, when the Biden administration told us that the vaccinated couldn't get the virus, were they guessing or lying? And I asked it that straightforward. Were they guessing or lying? And her response was, I don't know. I mean, that's frightening. So our government could have been lying. And they were going to, this is the same government. The Biden administration was going to set up the Disinformation Governance Board, right? And yet the biggest purveyor of disinformation is them, the government. And you look no further than COVID. They told us that it didn't come from a lab. Sure looks like it did. They told us that it wasn't gain-of-function research. Sure looks like it was. They told us that it wasn't our tax money used in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Yes, it was. They told us that the vaccinated couldn't get it. The vaccinated couldn't transmit it. Joe Biden told us he had a plan, for goodness sake, when he took. And then, of course, it was no mask, one mask, two masks, no mask.
Know.
They've been all. So, like, the biggest disinformation came from them. So I think we do need to get to the bottom of it, and particularly with Fauci knew. On January 31st, 2020, at 10:32 p.m., he gets an email from Dr. Christian Anderson. That email says, virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory. So he knew clear back then, over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, he knew this thing came from a lab. He gets that email at 10:32. He goes, sends his top assistant an email after midnight, sends another doctor an email at 2 in the morning. he's working like crazy to cover his backside. The next day, there's a conference call with Dr. Fauci and 11 of these virologists who've been getting our tax money. And on that conference call, Fauci gets them all to change their story. And 4 days later, Dr. Anderson, who initially said virus engineered, not consistent with evolutionary theory, came from a lab. 4 days later, changes his story and says, if you believe it came from a lab, you're a crazy disinformation, conspiracy theorist. All because Fauci orchestrated this whole thing. And we think we can show this just with those emails that we've had limited access to, but we've been able to get. That all needs to come out. And Fauci
this is why winning the House is so important. Because people say to me, well, what's it going to do? If we win back the House and the Senate, we can't stop Biden. He's going to veto everything. We're not on track to get a filibuster-proof Senate majority. But these things have to happen. And I know that you'll be on the front lines of that. The other thing that I think is so critical, and I tie it back to your book, is I was here in 2018 and we ran, or 2016, we ran on, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Every Republican said that across the country, and then we didn't do it. We weren't ready and we weren't prepared to govern and pass the things that were necessary. And we took a beating in the midterms in 2018 because of that. So you guys are coming up with a plan that you're going to unveil to the American people. How important is it that we share with the American people what Republicans will do if we're given or granted the opportunity to govern?
No, great question. I think it's critically important. Speaker Gingrich and Leader McCarthy talked about this yesterday. Lay out what we're for. Lay out what, we're going to be the party that's going to defend freedom. Remember, it's been the Biden administration that has attacked our First Amendment liberties, our Second Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment due process rights. So we're going to be the party that's going to defend freedom. We're going to be the party that's going to say, you know what? We think it's a pretty dumb idea to do what the Democrats did in Virginia a year ago when the Democrats for governor ran a campaign that said, we think government's smarter than moms and dads. And a bunch of moms and dads in Virginia said, I don't think so.
I don't think so. I know that's not true.
Exactly. I don't think so. And Glenn Youngkin's now the governor of a blue state, or what was considered kind of a blue state. So we need to stand up for parents and say moms and dads are best, know best what's for their kids, and particularly their kids' education, and be the party that understands the importance of family. We need to be the party that says we're not going to raise taxes like Biden wants to do. We're going to reduce regulation. Now, again, we're not going to get all that done because Biden's in the White House, but we need to run on those things, pass those things in the House, and show the country.
And show that they stopped it.
Yeah, show the country this is what we're for.
And then we can win back the White House in 2024. I'm going to segue to parents a little bit too, because I think with your background as a student athlete and being a coach and what we're seeing in this election, which is going to be a key issue. We're going to run on economic issues, right? We know inflation and gas prices are a huge issue, but cultural issues are a big issue too. And we are seeing the Democrat Party double down on things that make no sense. So tell me what you think about the Democrats pushing this agenda to have biological male athletes compete against women, not just in college, but in high school. What would you have thought about that during your coaching days at Ohio State?
It's goofy, and the whole country knows it's wrong. And then someone said that even University of Pennsylvania has said Leah Thomas is female athlete of the year. Or something like that. It's like it's just ridiculous. And this whole these cultural issues are. Americans have common sense and they get it. Guys should compete against guys. Girls should compete against girls. And let's let people set goals, work hard. And that's the beauty of athletics. It teaches you those fundamental values. My high school wrestling coach, I always tell the story, was the toughest teacher in our school. He taught chemistry and physics, and was I think the toughest wrestling coach in Ohio. And this is not an exaggeration. I talk about this in the book. This is not an exaggeration. Every single day he talked about discipline. Every day. He would say in the classroom, he'd say, hey, Jordan, this is chemistry class. This is not any class. This is chemistry class. More importantly, this is my chemistry class. You want to do well in this class, you're going to have to read the material. You're going to have to come to class prepared. You have to do the experiments. It's going to take discipline to do well in my class. And then the wrestling room, oh my goodness. I can still hear him. Discipline is the most important character quality you need to accomplish anything. If we're going to win as a team, we're going to win individually. You got to have discipline. All right, what that guy shut up. He sounds like my dad. I get it every day from my dad.
Exactly.
But he had a great definition, and it hangs. And our high school is one 22 years in a row now has been state champions. The first state championship was way back then, and then had a break where we still did well, but then they started. My brother coached for 20 years, and they won it 20 years in a row. But in our wrestling room, with this tradition, there's Coach McCunn was our coach, and there's a sign right with all the championship banners. But the biggest sign is Coach McCunn, which says this: discipline, doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. And it meant doing it Coach's way when you'd rather do it your way. It meant doing things the right way when you'd rather do it the easy way. That is just a key message that we're the Republican. We get that, and Americans get that. People get in all this craziness that the Democrats want to talk about, crazy things they want to do in our culture. It just goes against common sense, and we're the party of common sense and the party of working people, like we were talking about earlier. I think the country figures all that out.
I say this a lot. This isn't even an election about Democrat versus Republican. It's about common sense versus crazy.
Yep.
It's about America versus freedom, freedom of everything we believe in our Constitution versus socialism and moving towards communism. It's about authoritarianism versus freedom. I mean, these are so many things that are at stake. What are you looking forward to if we win back the House? I mean, how are you going to feel being able to retire Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah. That'll be, I think, a good day for the country. And I'm looking forward to, helping frame up the 2024 race. The way modern American politics and government work is if you really want to get big change, you have to control the executive branch. You just do. It's just the nature of the way it is. The founders didn't necessarily envision it that way. They actually wanted the legislative branch to have the bulk of the power, and we still do have big influence. But you got to control the executive branch if you really want to affect real change. And helping frame that up over the next, if we can win, which I think we can, then helping frame it up, passing what we need to pass so that the country sees that. And then I'm really looking forward to doing it. I like doing the investigations and making sure the country get the facts and the truth, which they're entitled to. And the other thing I think is so important is I think the country now has figured out that we're tired of the experts running the government.
Yeah.
It's the way it's supposed to work is the people who put their name on a ballot, they run. If the folks in their district elect them, those individuals make the decisions. And you want it that way because they're accountable, because if they make bad decisions, then the voters get to throw us out every 2 years. And that is a good thing. Right now, what's happened is you got the Faucis making all the decisions, and they never have to put their name on the ballot. They never have to stand. They have to go out and talk directly to we the people. And so I think the power that the bureaucracy has is something we as Republicans need to kind of rein in as best we can when we get control as well.
Well, the bureaucrats have so much control, and you being part of oversight, which is a check on the executive branch. And I hope people understand the Biden administration has really tried to expand the executive branch with OSHA, with the vaccine mandates, with so many things that they've done with this EPA, things that they've done. And the Supreme Court has been the best check on them, thank goodness, and restoring the balance of power. But we need to win back Congress. And I think you're going to be so critical. I often say this: Democrats run the country with a bunch of 20, 30-year-olds who read a book about starting a business, and Republicans actually send people to govern who started and ran a business. And which one actually is a better experience? So I think it's going to be so critical. I'm just going to ask you one final question before we leave, but I run into a lot of people who are disheartened right now. Republicans who say, I don't know, I feel upset. I'm mad that President Trump didn't win. Should I even go vote? What do you say to people who are discouraged about how important it is to get involved in this midterm?
I always say it's never forget it's America. It's the best place ever. Greatest country ever. And I tell this story a lot when I'm out on the stump, but it's true. We this is 10, 12 years ago, Polly and I, we live up in Urbana, Ohio. We went down to Dayton, met some friends for dinner that night. But before we went to dinner, we toured the Wright brothers' home. And you go on this tour, you learn all about these amazing Americans, these two brothers, all the things they did, the bicycle shop, the things they tinkered around with and did. Last stop on the tour is one of the brothers' bedrooms. They show you a picture, actually two pictures, tell you a few things about this brother, and then they hold up the picture. It was that first flight, 1903, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, in this thing they call a plane. And you're like, how did that thing get off the ground? And the truth is it barely did. flew like 100 feet and got like 8 feet off the ground. And you see that picture and you kind of remember that when you learn it in school and you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. And I remember that. And they put that down. Then they hold up a second picture. 44 years later, 1947, Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier in a jet. And I'm like, holy cow, I didn't know that. I don't remember that in school. And they show that and you're like, well, that's amazing. In 44 years, we went from two guys flying 100 feet, first flight ever, to another American breaking the sound barrier. And they put that picture down. And literally, that's the end of the tour. And Polly and I are walking out the door. And as I'm literally walking out the door of that room, it hit me. Well, wait a minute. Wait, why'd they stop there? I represent Wapakoneta, Ohio, hometown of Neil Armstrong. Why did they stop there? Because 22 years after Chuck Yeager breaks the sound barrier, another American steps on the moon.
Yeah.
And stop and think about it. When you start to get discouraged, stop and think about it. From 1903 to 1969, 66 years, we went from two guys flying 100 feet to putting a man on the moon. No other country did that. And I would argue no other country had in place the principles and the process and the system and the freedoms to even get close to doing that. Only America could do that. And it is the greatest country ever. And I always tell folks, don't ever let anyone tell you it's not. It is the best place ever. And it is worth fighting for. And that's what you're doing with our party, as leading our party. That's what we're all supposed to do as Americans. And if we think about that, it's worth going and voting. It is worth fighting for those people who believe in your values and helping those candidates. That's what's at stake. And I always tell folks, our challenge, our task has always been the same as Americans, to protect the promise this country has always afforded its citizens. The promise to if you have a dream, you have a goal, if you work hard, it can happen. That's our job.
I love that. Yeah, if you have the dream, if you dream it and you have discipline, like your coach said, we can do it in this country.
In this country, heck yeah.
But that's not everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's precious. And we have to fight for it. It doesn't just happen. So thank you for being somebody who's out there every day doing that.
You're doing the hard work, running the party. God bless you.
And thanks, everybody. Please get out and vote. Please go support a candidate. Go to GOP.com. We need everybody engaged in this battle. Because if we don't win this election, we may not be able to have these types of conversations about our future.
No, it's that serious. Well said.
It's that serious. Well, so thank you. Thanks for being on my podcast. An Ohio State fan and a Michigan fan.
There we go.
There is hope for our country and peace.
That's well said.
Jim. I'm Ronna McDaniel, and this is what Republicans stand for. Join us next time on Real America.